Yeah, and Jay, I think I sent you a note. I'm probably gonna have to duck out around 10:30, so
Yeah.
apologies in advance.
I think we might finish up by then anyway. It looks like a
Okay.
pretty short agenda.
Okay, great.
So quiet.
Yeah.
Did anyone, there was supposedly an accident this morning on the causeway.
No, I didn't hear about that.
There was, my staff came in, it took them 3 hours. Yeah, it was
Oh,
pretty
no.
bad.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Wow. 3
Yeah, but
hours. Wow.
well, that's from where they left home. Usually it's an hour and a half, an hour, so added 2 hours probably.
Well,
Yeah.
that's still
Yeah.
long.
Once I guess they were coming across the causeway, the accident, maybe you know about it, Rich, was somewhat cleared, but it was just backed up. You know how things go.
I got flagged down about it this morning, that they said that the traffic was backed up on McGregor. And when I checked the notes on a computer, it didn't have much information, so I wasn't sure exactly the details behind it. So, but I'm sure it's pretty bad.
It'll clear up, like everything else.
So,
Just like Acme, if you're a kid, it'll clear up.
well, if it was on the causeway, that road is so narrow that if there's like disabled truck or something in the middle of it, or maybe a rollover or something, it could be really backed up and difficult to move them out of the way. And then if you get down to one lane, that's not fun either.
No.
All over.
Well, we start the meeting, but it looks like there aren't a lot of people on yet. Let's see.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, we have 9 panel members here.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I think I will start because I know one was going to be absent. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the December meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. I am Jay Brown, president of the panel, and I'll start off with a roll call. First, Tony Lappy.
I'm here.
David Mintz.
I'm here, thank you.
Marguerite Maville.
I'm here.
Ann Brady.
She'll be here in a couple minutes.
Okay. Bruce McDonald.
Yes, I'm here.
Linda Laird.
I'm here.
Okay, we've heard from Baby Blue. Ken Suarez.
I'm here.
Hi,
Good morning.
Ken. Ken Gill.
Here.
Hi, Ken. Sandy Stillwell.
Here.
And John Jensen had notified me that he was going to be missing today's meeting. So we were all here. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
I'll
A
second.
second. A second?
Sandy? I second. Okay.
Okay, any discussion about the minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. First up, we have Rich Zaltman, our sergeant, our Captiva sheriff, all of the above. Rich, what's new?
Good morning, Jay.
Huh.
Well, similar to what we discussed last month, the beaches are closed, which kind of puts us in a bind with parking again.
Right.
These fishermen want to go and park, and they've been parking along the side of the road. And, we've been getting some calls about people parking in driveways and, private property. So I would like to encourage your listeners that if they don't want anybody to park on their property or driveways, that they may want to consider putting up a barricade or some type of rope up, in front of their house so that they discourage people from parking there. But people that park on the roadway, we enforce,
Okay, so if people are parked illegally, you give them a ticket or
yes,
something like
Yes.
that? Okay.
yes. If they're on the roadway, they should expect a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're on somebody's private property, it's up to them to have them trespassed or put up, what I recommend is kind of put up some type of barricade to prevent them from pulling into their driveway in the first place.
Okay.
And Sanibel is doing the same thing on their side of Blind Pass. They're citing people who are parking illegally. I also recommend your viewers, unfortunately, the parking at Blind Pass is closed. If you want to drop off your friends or loved ones to go fishing, you could certainly do that, but you can't park at this time.
Right.
Is there
Yeah,
any word from Sanibel when they're gonna open up their side?
I have not heard, Tony.
Cause they
I'm
got
sorry.
all the shell there and I think they'd be pretty close.
Well,
Let's hope it's soon.
we've closed some of the beaches because of red tide. Well, not CEPD, but environmental protection.
Where's the red tide?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of a red tide.
No, my.
Okay, at Allison Haggard, there was a sign that went up Friday or Saturday and about red tide and that it's closed and hazardous. I took my dogs out Thursday. They all started sneezing. My understanding is it may be moving south, but I really don't know. All I know is, yes, we do have red tide to the north. I'm staying away. I don't know if there's any fish kills or anything. I hope not going on, but there is some. If you look at the red tide maps, there's a dot up by South Seas. The last time I looked, may not be there anymore.
No,
It's not.
unfortunately it is, and it shows a medium infestation. The level is medium right now. It moved south and it's kind of thinning out north of us. So I think it will just pass by, hopefully quickly.
Margarita, are you looking at an app of some kind or?
Yeah, it's called Red Tide Current Status.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a map that shows water sampling all around Florida, actually.
Mm-hmm. They sample at the parking lot frequently. I don't know how frequently, but they come out and sample at the parking lot.
Yeah.
Hey, well, that's interesting to find out about that app. Rich, do you have anything else for us?
That's it for this month, Jay.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Jeff Powell, are you around, Jeff?
I am. Good morning, Jay. Good morning,
How are you
everyone.
doing?
Hey, Jeff.
Doing well. Before any update on our end, is there anything else that you guys need from me as far as the last special meeting we did with FEMA and those kinds of measures? Or anything you need me to follow up or continue on that front?
I'm not aware of anything, Jeff.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No,
Okay. Very good. If any of that changes, just let me know. I can reach back out to them and answers, resources, whatever might be needed. Just let me know.
Okay, well, again, thank you for the wonderful job you did following the last two hurricanes.
Yeah, of
Really.
course. Absolutely. That's what we're here for, and that's what we'll continue to do. So, first, I'll make mine quick. First update, just want to let you guys know that we had, I think I mentioned at one other meeting, but we had received a pretty good donation from a resident out here to purchase some new state-of-the-art medical equipment and devices for the fire district here. So, just wanted to let you guys know that those devices and stuff are going in service, increasing our ability on some medical calls with some new equipment and some real cool state-of-the-art stuff, ultrasound, video laryngoscopes. There's an auto pulse that kind of assists with CPR. So just want to thank you for that. Obviously, our residents are great, and this is just another example of you guys providing for us. Thank you for that. And lastly, if anybody saw, I just wanted to give you an update. We had provided coverage in town in Fort Myers and South Trails District the other day. They had a firefighter who lost his life and had a large funeral in town. I'm sure some of you may have seen it on the news. So they had helped us out during the hurricane. So we were honored to return that favor to them and provide coverage in their district Friday morning and afternoon, so their whole department could attend that funeral. So
That's
if
sad.
you saw our truck going off island or in the procession or whatever, that's what we had going on.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
What do we have next? CEPD update. John Wade, are you present? John.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, John.
Good morning.
Just so everybody remembers, John is going to be joining the panel in January. Welcome to the panel, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on the panel and serving your community in yet another capacity.
Well, thank you for that. I'll do what I can. The CEPD had its meeting yesterday. We don't have a lot of update this month, short of some announcements that I want to make and just give you a brief update on the ongoing sand management, I guess is the best way to put
Yes,
it.
right. That's on a lot of people's minds.
We're at the tail end. CEPD has gone through its budget. It's gone over its budget actually a little bit with managing the sand since Milton ended. We are happy to say that the Turner Beach sand has been distributed in partnership with the Department of Transportation. We utilize that sand to fortify, working with Doug Busby and Steve Buttel. We used most of that sand to fortify the S-curve at Jensen's, which we all knew was a priority in making sure that that road was protected for any future events. We utilized the extra sand at that point in working with the DOT contractor to put the piles from the S-curve headed north, as far north as we could until we ran out of sand, which I believe came just short of Andy Rossi. In addition to that, as you are aware, we utilized all of the sand around the rest of the community prior to that, and we went through as much as we could with a screening process that we set up at Allison Hagart parking lot. I did get a call yesterday from someone asking about the screener that is still at the parking lot. That is not something that was a surprise to me. The screener was supposed to have left 2 weeks ago, but the contractor just hasn't gotten around to it. So that screener is still on island. I would say if there are any communities or property, large homeowners associations or property owners that are still interested in utilizing the screener, they should reach out to the CEPD, and I may be able to get you in contact with the contractor. But at this point in time, CEPD has finished its sand screening, and we are moving forward with going into the new year, concentrating on the beach renourishment. Any existing sand, I know we have a large pile at the end of Andy Rossi. We've got some sand at the library parking lot, as well as on some of the other private streets that have accumulated over the last couple of weeks from some property owners that are just starting to get around and catching up on some sand that they had on their properties. In dealing with the DOT, they acknowledged, they put out a couple of statements in that they were going to be coming in to do some final pickups. They have not gotten around to that yet. I want to clarify, there have been some statements even from the CCP, which have been great about giving homeowners some last final, notice on pickup before they stop coming. One of them is for disposal, obviously, in regards to people cleaning out their homes. And the other one is for the sand. The DOT is going to pick up the sand with their loaders. The disposal department of Lee County is obviously going to deal with the items that people are accumulating outside of their homes. My last conversation was, I believe, the disposal services was supposed to end this week. That any debris that was going to be put out at the right of way after this week would be at the responsibility of the homeowners association or the individual property owner. I don't want to speak for this disposal, but that was the last notice that I received from them as far as final warning. With regard to the sand, Doug Busby is fully aware that we have those piles. He's doing everything he can to get the loaders out here again, but he wanted to emphasize to everyone out here in Captiva that this would be the last pickup for from the Department of Transportation. So any sand that is put out on the right of way on any of these streets, as they pile up, we should be aware of it. If there's anything new that you guys might see starting to appear, it'd be good for us to know so that we can let the Doug know before he gets out here, because once he comes out here once with the loaders and the dump trucks, he doesn't plan on coming back again. So,
right. So, John, excuse me, are you saying that if there are people that still have sand, on their property that they want to get rid of, that Busby's going to pick up that sand?
He's going to pick up the sand that's on the right of way in the on the public access. And we have a very big pile at the end of Andy Rossi. Most of that has come from, I believe, Sunset Captiva. Bob Johnson's working on that. There's this line here that I want to make sure everybody understands, is that this can't go on in perpetuity.
Right.
So the individual private HOAs and communities, property owners, they are going to have to take responsibility for the sand after Doug comes about. I don't have a date, unfortunately, to draw that line, but it will be soon, probably within the next week or so.
Okay.
Any other disposal services and sand pickups will have to be between the private organizations and whatever other private services they can muster.
Okay, so this week is probably the last week, if you have a lot of sand on your property, to get the sand up to the roadside. The county will pick it up. After that, you've got to figure out what to do with the sand yourself.
That's
a fair summary.
Yes. Yes. And it's not unusual. It was on the news last night that not Collier County. What's the county north of us?
Charlotte.
Charlotte County. Yeah, they just announced as well, that all of their disposal services would be ending this week. So I would say that Lee County was very good about extending it out, probably longer than I think they would have preferred. But they were great about getting everybody an opportunity to remove as much sand as possible. This last storm was very unique. I think everybody knows that, in that there was an extraordinary amount of sand that was placed upwind off the shoreline, far more than we experienced during Ian. So it was a bit of a unique project for all parties, and I'm very happy to say that Lee County was a great partner in helping us manage that sand. Going forward, I know there is going to be there's still sand in the cemetery. And there are plenty of other properties that still have sand, you know, that I'm sure they would like to do something with. I don't really have a good answer on how to deal with that. I think they should reach out to their local landscapers and whatnot and try to figure something out. We will still, as for the community, I will talk to Doug about, you know, maybe some options on where that sand could be disposed of. Off island, or maybe in some sort of depot area, maybe between us and Sanibel. I'm not sure yet. We're still working on that. The sand cannot go out on the beach unless it's been fully screened, period.
Right.
The community, I think, knows that by now. And that's that for the sand management. Hopefully we are past that, at least on a level that we can concentrate now on moving forward and getting the beaches back where they need to be.
Right. So, John, the way the beaches look now, right now, is the way it's going to be until we get past the next renourishment. Is that a fair statement?
I would say so, yes. We did have an initial project that we tried to get off the ground, where we went out and started quoting to bring in upland sand from some quarries and whatnot. It became too expensive, and the logistics with the trucks bringing them in for the, you know, if we had not had the contract in place to do the beach renourishment this spring, I think that would have been prioritized more, but it became too expensive. The upland sand project to bring in just simply became too cumbersome, expensive. We couldn't get it to work. And we made the call to just simply say we will do the best we can with the repurposed sand that we had, which we think was a very successful project, in that it added over 10,000 cubic yards of sand from the S-curve all the way up to South Seas. And that should suffice. Hopefully, we cross our fingers that we don't get any really big nor'easters. And we continue now to work on the main project of beach renourishment, which is set to start on sometime on give or take May 1st, depending on the contractor schedule. And what I call the Dunes project, which will be a separate matter in where we specifically design the most robust dune protection system that we can across the village area up towards many parts of the South Seas. And I specifically mentioned those areas simply because, as we were notified yesterday by Aptum, our engineering consulting firm who manages the project, they had just finished up their reassessment after Milton, and they were happy to say that the storm was very odd in that everything south of Tween Waters actually increased. We actually need less sand south of Tween Waters than we did prior to the Milton, Helene hurricanes.
Now, when you say Tween Waters, do you mean the Tween Waters stretch or just the Tween Waters resort?
I don't have an exact delineation, but
right
around the Tween Waters, somewhere in the middle of the Tween Waters. Going north, the most impacted beach erosion was around mid-South Seas down to the village. And we lost an additional 300,000 cubic yards after Ian going into Milton and Helene. We are now coordinating a change order for the project to make up for that 300,000 yards. And we don't see that being a problem. We already had a contingency in there to add an additional 25% of sand to the existing project. So the net effect is only $100,000 cubic yard.
But
change.
more sand than what you were thinking you had to do before.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, about 300,000 cubic yards. So, and to give you some perspective, we only added about 10 to 12,000 cubic yards of repurposed sand. And I think it made a hell of a difference in the village area where we completely lost the dunes and the village was completely exposed. So it's quite a bit more.
Hey, John, it's Bruce McDonald. Thanks for coming in this morning. Just a question for you. As part of the renourishment, are you guys looking at increasing the height of the dunes versus where they are today?
Yes, depending on where you're talking about. Again, it's a very dynamic situation where the elevations and the beach width is different in on almost every aspect of the 5+ miles. But where there are no dunes, we're going to start from scratch. And where there are dunes, we have assessed the height at that point. As you may see on the southern end of the Tween Waters where there were some poles and ropes that you can only see the tops of them. They were, the sand increased by 2 to 3 feet. We have no, that sand's going to stay there. So what we are going to do is, rather than adding sand, depending on that elevation, rather than adding sand, we're just going to basically shape it, and we're going to address the vegetation and just make sure that it's as even and as possible. The idea here is to get to around 12 to 13 feet of dune height. But again, it's a tough, saying that number doesn't really mean a lot because it's off of NAVD elevation.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to understand what 12 feet is when you're on the beach because you just don't know what the elevation is.
If you kind of look, John, I was going to say, if you kind of go down.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to finish. We're going to maximum height that we can, according to the engineers.
Okay. Yeah. So if you kind of look at the work you've done by the Jensen's S curve, you've obviously bermed that up. Is that about the height you'd be looking at?
I'm hesitant to say because I don't have the engineering data.
Oh, okay.
I don't imagine that height is. I think that height is, to be honest with you, around 10 to 12 feet.
Okay.
But
I don't. And then you would.
Bruce, Bruce.
Hold on, let's go one at a time. Okay, Linda?
Bruce, the road there is 6 feet high. Okay, it's considered 6 feet. And so you can look at the dunes above that and figure out how high it is. All right.
Okay. And then you're going to look to plant on top of those, right?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
So John, inside South Seas, there is some confusion as to what owners can do and what they cannot do. I think it would be valuable to put out some kind of documentation. I know there's some already out there, but I know there's a couple of the HOAs that want to take a proactive step in protecting their property by planting, native vegetation that complies with what the CEPD is doing in the future. And, it would be great if there was some kind of a standard or protocol written for what you can do, on the part of the property that they control. I know that there's a line delineation somewhere around there, but I know that they do want to take a proactive step. I also want to say I've been working with John Reiger, and he's been fantastic at being proactive with us and making sure that what's being placed back out onto the beach is clean sand. And I understand we had a pretty somewhat of a favorable report from BEP in Lee County as to how clean things are. I know there's still some work to be done, but I can't thank John enough. He's been very, very helpful to us inside the resort. But if there was some kind of a standard that we could go off of, a lot of these HOAs have insurance money that includes re-landscaping, and they would like to use that in a proactive way to help rebuild that dune and protect their property overall.
So Ken, thank you for bringing that up. It's very, I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's going to be a very important part of this project going forward. If any of you have listened to the last number of meetings that we've had since Milton, it's been spoken of every time. We spoke about it yesterday as well. One of the key elements here that is going to be different than, say, past renourishments is because of we're going to be working so closely within the dunes, whereas in the past it was mostly about the beach, is that we are going to be working closely with Aptum to establish, literally on paper, which we will present to the community at some given point in time, hopefully in mid to late February, maybe don't hold me, maybe it goes to March 1st. But we would like to be able to get some actual blueprints out to the public to show that delineation between the homeowners' properties and where the CEPD is comfortable in taking on the management and the protection and the building of the future dune protection management. We don't know what that is yet. It's going to be part of the project, and as a property owner myself, and I'm sure my neighbors, everybody would like to know, where do I tell my landscaper to take care of things, and where does the dunes and the natural management and the CEPD take over? And in regards to making sure that everybody understands what can be done, what plans can be done, what can't be done, and all of that, we have full intentions on putting out. We haven't come up with a name yet, some sort of combination of an FAQ dunes management manual that will be available and distributed to the public.
That's a great idea, John. That would be terrific.
Yeah, I mean, just we don't. It's just as valuable to us because we want to be able to fully understand what we have with regards to our responsibilities and budgetary wise. If we're going to be bringing in vegetation, where we start, where we stop. It's easy on the ocean side because we convert that over into the beach side as part of the dredging. But it's that line between the back end of the newly created dunes and the oceanfront properties. So, yeah, it'll be.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Well, last couple of items. We are preparing to go to the county. We've been talking about this for a while now to create a new interlocal agreement for this project. I would invite anybody on the panel or the community watching that has some ideas on how to best engage the county and the commissioners to make them aware of our need out here, and that Captiva really is depending on a partnership with Lee County to help us with this project. We are not fully funded. They've helped us out in the past. We expect that they will help us out again, but to what degree? I think Captiva as a community needs to come together and really make sure that the county understands the importance of them really, digging deep to help us get this project once and for all off the ground, and helping fund it so that it's not completely on the back of the taxpayers, which, we all are aware still paying for the last one just 3 years ago.
Right. John, historically, what share of the renourishment costs has the county picked up? Do you know, or?
Well, there's two components. There is what we refer to as the TDC cost share, which last in 21, it came to about 30% of, it's not 30% of the project, it's 30% of whatever is left over that we can't receive grant funding on. And then they also added additional funding above and beyond that cost share of just over $1 million. So just off the top of my head, I believe we we're into them for about, it was just under $5 million in 21.
Okay. And the total cost was what, maybe 30, something like that? I don't remember.
No, I think it was like 19 and 21.
Okay.
Yeah. We are in a different position today, though. We definitely are, and I'm really hoping that Lee County and the commissioners could recognize that this is not a normal beach renourishment. This is not a normal situation for anybody, and we're really hoping to sit with them and hope and make them understand that because of the dune situation, we have zero protection in some areas. You know, even during Ian, we had a decent amount of protection because our dunes was still somewhat intact, which I think is why we had such a sand situation that we didn't experience during Ian. So that interlocal agreement hopefully will be wrapped up by early February, and we will know the results of it. And we do continue to work on other grant resources as well. There is a component to some additional state funding through the Florida DEP, but it has to go through the next legislative session, which doesn't even begin till March. So as we were talking about yesterday, that will have to happen in a retroactive sense, that maybe even if we, when we sit down with Lee County, if they could, you know, go the extra mile with some funding, we might be able to even reimburse them some of that money, depending on what the state kicks up at the next legislative session, which is yet to really address the Milton Helene situation. Right now, all of our funding is centered around Ian still.
Okay.
Dan Munt is no longer the executive director. His last day was last week. John Regan has taken over. He's the deputy director. He's taken over Dan's duties for the time being. The board continues to interview people, and we are taking that one day at a time. John seems to be keeping things together. I'm working closely with him at least 3 to 4 days a week myself, and we are interviewing. We have 2 other resumes in that we are very encouraged about, and we are hopefully we'll make a decision on what that administrative structure looks like after the new year. The last piece is I want to make sure it's actually part of our bylaws. I want to make sure that the CCP and the community is aware that we do have a vacant seat. Richard Pyle resigned in August, and his term expires at the end of December. We had an interim commissioner take his place for the fall, but that seat is going to be opened up on January 1st. So anybody that would be interested, please contact the CEPD, and we will be making the appointment for that seat sometime in January. That's all I have.
Okay, so that person doesn't have to go through an election. He's going to finish out Pyle's term. Is that? And so the existing commissioners can appoint him to finish out Pyle's term, and then after that.
So the gentleman we're talking about is Mike Lanigan.
Yeah, right.
He came in September. We appointed him, but the appointments only goes to the end of the elected term. Dick's elected term went through December, and then because he was appointed, the seat goes vacant again. And
I see.
So now this next appointment is going to be a 4-year appointment for January. Is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, but if you have multiple candidates for that, would there be an election to determine which?
The board elects via appointment. There's a vote on the board. So if we had 2 to 3 resumes or whatnot, the board would invite them all to come in. We'd interview them, and then we would make the appointment. The actual, going through the Board of Elections is the responsibility of the commissioners solely. The CEPD does not get involved in the seat elections. I was appointed, to give you an example, I was appointed last year, and then I ran through the Board of Elections through the
Right.
county. And so my new term starts in January. So there's no appointment, I'm still under appointment until the end of the month. And then my actual term starts in January, and same with Renee as well. No one anticipated that that Richard would be leaving so suddenly, so it was kind of a shock to us.
Right.
So, we would prefer the seat to be filled through the Board of Elections, but that's just not how it's working out at this, because of timing.
Okay.
So we will be putting that out to the public through various media, but also I wanted the board to know that we welcome any and all interest to let us know if they want to be considered for the seat.
Okay, John, that's a very thorough report. We really appreciate it.
Jay,
Is
there are a couple of audience questions
I
that
was
are
gonna
not
ask
really
that.
CEPD related.
I'm sorry?
There are a couple of audience questions, but they're not really CEPD related. I don't know if you want to deal with them now or not.
Yeah, I will. First, let me ask, does any of the panel members have any further questions for John?
Yeah, I have one question for John. In terms of the indebtedness of the CEPD, are we okay with the existing referendum that created, I think it was $25 million in debt or something? I'm not quite sure the number. I wasn't on the call Monday. Or do we need to have another referendum prior to the beach renourishment? Do we have a sense of that yet?
That's a great question, Dave. It was brought up by John yesterday about the possibility of putting out another referendum to add more to the funding. I don't agree with that. Right now we are under our limit. We have the ability to finance everything we're doing under the current referendum. If there's going to be a referendum in the near future, it will be, once we get past this project, the Board of Commissioners is considering putting together an emergency fund that we used to have a long time ago that expired, so that, God forbid, something happens in the future. We missed out on this past renourishment simply because of that referendum date. And I think in the future, it makes sense for the community to have an emergency fund that can address a hurricane without having to wait for the next referendum.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse things. The short answer is that we are well positioned to finance the extra 300,000 cubic yards for this project.
Okay, that's a great answer. I'm glad to hear that. If for some reason it changes, then you can count on the panel to help organize for any passage of a future referendum that may be needed.
Yes, the board right now is having pretty robust discussions about managing our from our last renourishment, where we were in a very, very unique, we had a unique advantage in that at the time of 21, the rates being what they were compared to what they are now, the CEPD is actually doing quite well via arbitrage on the difference between those bond rates. The economy has changed since then. We cannot do that for this renourishment. So what they essentially did was when we borrowed the money, they didn't pay off the loans, they bought the bonds instead. And we have those bonds that they can be, liquidated at any given time, which is why we aren't in any sort of, we don't have our backs against the wall on any sort of debt service, ceiling.
Great, thank you.
Okay, did you say we had some questions from the audience on other topics?
Yes. First one was a question on the status of the Mucky Duck being rebuilt, if anybody has heard anything.
I've heard from Andrea and a few weeks ago, but I guess what he told me is that the Mucky Duck has historic designation and therefore does not need to be rebuilt to new standards, and he fully intends to reopen. I know he was talking to contractors, but he didn't give me a date, but he does definitely plan on, his current plan is to reopen.
Okay.
And the other question you may want to wait on, it's a question about the South Seas Sunset Beach easement injunction. I don't know if Ken wants to answer it now or wait until David's made his presentation about South Seas in general.
I can update that. There's not much to update on. We're requesting a hearing date before a judge. Ironically, the judge that is overseeing that case is the same judge that is overseeing the settlement agreement case. And we hope to get something on the court's schedule in the near future. I have also been working with our legal counsel representing the HOAs. And if anybody's been inside the resort lately, the building itself, I see two problems. One, it almost sits right on top of the road. I have measured it myself. The corner of the building is actually 9.5 feet off the curb of the road, and the overhang of the soffit and roof line is almost parallel with the road itself. So it's very, very close. At a quick look at the land development code, there should have been at least a 20-foot setback from the easement, which the road is an easement, and there's absolutely zero setback with the roof line. On the 30-foot access easement, it's been in place since 1960. The front door for the restaurant is basically on the easement line. And so patrons would actually have to be on the easement to walk in to the front door of the restaurant. But there's really on the court side, there's nothing really to report at this moment.
Okay, Ken, any other questions from the audience to address right now?
No.
Okay, well then let's move on. Is Matt DePaulis here for an SCCF update?
I'm not seeing anybody on the list who's from SCCF. If that's not the case, raise your hand and I'll elevate you, but I don't think you've got anybody here.
Okay, I think that's, I don't think they were at the last meeting also, if I remember correctly.
They had let us know that Matt was unavailable and the person who was going to sub for him was tied up and doing something
Okay.
else. So that this time I haven't heard anything at all.
Okay. Well, we probably need to clarify with SCCF if they, if they want to be on the agenda. We of course, hope they will be. We've been doing this for quite a while for them. Okay, next up, David Mintz, the legal review for us.
Yeah, I'm glad to do that. As everybody, I believe, in the community knows, there are three major venues that are being used to deal with some of these issues at South Seas. And actually an update went out yesterday on the panel, CCA's and SCCF's website that updated people about one of the legal actions, but I'll just review quickly where we are at this point. You mentioned before the settlement agreement. That was the 2003 settlement agreement, which said that the county can never issue building permits for South Seas greater than 912 units. And that was the 2003 settlement agreement between CCA, the developer of South Seas, and the county. And Protect Captiva has gone to court to enforce that agreement. The county and South Seas together filed a motion to dismiss that action, and that motion to dismiss was denied. Now the parties have asked the court to decide that case via summary judgment motions. Cross motions were filed. Protect Captiva, the CCA, has filed a motion for summary judgment to enforce that 912 limit. And the county and South Seas together have filed a motion for summary judgment to have that complaint dismissed. The court has set December 18th for initial hearings on the South Seas County motion for summary judgment and the Protect Captiva opposition. It will be a similar oral argument that took place with the motion to dismiss, and will be a similar argument that will take place on the Protect Captiva's motion for summary judgment. They're the same issues. Basically, we believe it's an enforceable contract that was executed and approved by the Board of County Commissioners, and the plain language of the contract limits development to 912 units. The county's position on this with South Seas basically is that this litigation is not ripe for resolution because they haven't done anything yet, but they amended the code that allows for an increase above 912, so it's clearly ripe. They're claiming we're asking the court to give an advisory opinion. They're claiming that there's a violation of separation of powers. They're claiming that it interferes with the county's police powers to rezone the property anytime they want. They're claiming that it constitutes illegal contract zoning, which it doesn't. They're claiming it's barred by sovereign immunity, which it isn't. And they're saying that the agreement doesn't really say what everybody knows it says. So in effect, what the county is saying is that they didn't have the authority to make that agreement initially in 2003, and the court doesn't have the jurisdiction or the authority to endorse it today. And that's the fight in the court, and the judge is going to have to make a decision as to whether that duly executed contract, which the county signed, which was a result of a mediation, which all parties were participated in, and which was endorsed by the court. The judge today will have to decide whether that is a valid contract. So that's number one. That's going to be heard initially on December 18th.
Now, David, on that, if that is argued on December 18th, when might we get a decision?
I can't answer that. I don't know. We don't have a date yet for argument on our motion. They should have been held at the same time, but they couldn't coordinate. The court and the various parties couldn't coordinate dates. I'm not even sure we're going to need a hearing on our motion, because I think what will be argued on December 18th will be all the issues that'll be argued on the initial motion. So I am not quite sure what the judge is going to do. The judge could grant the county's motion for summary judgment. The judge could deny their motion for summary judgment. The judge, even without argument on our motion, which is basically the same as what will be argued on the 18th, could just approve our motion for grant our motion for summary judgment. So it's very difficult to determine what the judge is going to do. But all of the issues are joined. He knows what they are. All the motions on paper have been submitted. I am confident he's read them all. So we just don't know. We will have a real sense of where we are after December 18th with that particular case.
Okay, this just mystifies me how you can say 20 years after the fact, oh, we didn't have the authority to do that.
It is mystifying. It is.
I mean,
It
I
is.
just don't get it.
It is. So we shall see. I think Florida courts, Florida law encourages mediated settlements of disputes. This was a mediated settlement of a dispute that occurred in 2003 when South Seas sought to add lockout units to Bayside Villas, basically doubling the number of hotel units at Bayside from 102 to 204. At that point, the county, CCA, and the developer at South Seas agreed that was inappropriate and violated the zoning, which set the limit at 912. And that settlement agreement flowed from that dispute. It was approved by the county attorney's office. It was approved by the attorneys for CCA. It was approved by the developer of South Seas. It then went before the Board of County Commissioners, who voted to approve the settlement. It then went back to the court, who endorsed the settlement. And so that's where we are.
God, I don't get it, David. How could,
So
all right.
there we are.
You've heard me complain enough about this one. It just doesn't make any sense.
We'll have, maybe you'd like to argue before the court.
I think I'm the last guy you want speaking to a judge.
So anyway, so that's number one. Number two, as everybody knows, we have contended that the code amendments that exempt South Seas from the heightened density limits violate the plan, the comprehensive plan, which governs Lee County, because the comprehensive plan requires the county to enforce the historic development pattern of Captiva and deliver all new development consistent with that historic development pattern, which everybody knows is 3 units per acre. That's gone back for 50 years. And so we had 5 days of trial before the administrative law judge. The proposed final orders by all sides have to be filed this week. And the court has issued an order advising the parties that the judge, will issue a decision on that case on January 13th. So not only do we have the settlement agreement case being heard on the 18th of December, we will have a decision from the Division of Administrative Hearings on the consistency of the code with the plan January 13th. And so we're cautiously optimistic. We think the trial went very well before the judge. And we think the proposed final orders that we're submitting, which has been approved to be 60 pages long, which everybody will get a copy of. It'll go out as soon as it's finalized. And
we all need to read that by what date?
we'll read it by it'll go out probably Thursday of this week. So you need to read it by Friday. And
Okay, no problem.
we will have a test on it on Saturday.
Okay.
But the motion for summary judgment, which is before Judge Schenko on the settlement agreement, that everybody has a copy of, because that went out yesterday. And if you'd like to read that, that is available to everybody, because that was attached to the email that went out yesterday.
Right.
The third thing is the plan application. South Seas seeking 2 hotels of 435 units and an additional 196 condominiums. That plan application was deemed sufficient by the county. And they have just scheduled, they changed the dates on when the hearing was going to take place before the hearing examiner. We had heard it was going to be February 25th. It was going to start and be February 25th, 26th, and 27th, I believe. But we just received notice yesterday that the hearing before the hearing examiner will commence on February 14th. And then it will continue on February 20th and 21st. My supposition is that on the 14th, there will be presentations by the applicant, and there'll be examinations by some of the attorneys, and there probably will not be public comment on the 14th. My guess is, and we will confirm this because these dates are still tentative, but my guess is that the public will be invited to testify on this application on February 20th and February 21st. And so Protect Captiva will make sure everybody in the communities of Sanibel and Captiva will know about these hearing dates. We will help coordinate participation in those hearings, and we will try to reach out to everybody who has testified before in 2023 about this application, about increasing density and height. So keep in mind, probably February 20th and 21st will be an opportunity for the public to participate in the hearing that'll take place before the hearing examiner.
Now, when you say that, David, that's just public comment?
No, there will be a presentation. What the applicant has the burden of proof in that case, that's South Seas.
Yeah.
They present their case, why they think their application should be approved. The Protect Captiva the associations at South Seas who opposed that application, the CCA and Protect Captiva who opposed that application will have an opportunity to present witnesses to examine either directly or through the hearing examiner the applicant's witnesses. It'll be a basic hearing or a trial.
Yeah, this will be, if this building's here, it's gonna block these lines of sights and, you know, all that.
Environmental heights, consistency with the code, consistency with the plan, that'll all take place.
Traffic, things like that, yeah.
But what I'm suggesting is in addition to that, which will be a more formal legal process of witnesses, et cetera, there will be an opportunity for the public, just like they spoke at the hearings in June of 2023, there'll be an opportunity for the public to state their positions to the hearing examiner, probably on February 20th and 21st.
Okay.
And that, we don't want that to be helter-skelter. We want that to be organized and efficient. We don't want people to repeat themselves. So we will help assist the public in making those presentations once we firm up those dates. But what I'm hearing is that the dates of February 20th and 21st will probably be the dates where the public can directly participate. Of course, the public can observe everything that takes place on February 14th, if that date is the date that the hearing starts. We have been advised that the chief hearing examiner has been assigned to this case. That's Donna Marie Collins. She's the chief. My understanding is that she's a very capable, competent, and fair hearing examiner. And so that's a good thing for us. So that's where we are in terms of the dates. We will keep everybody advised. There may be some new things coming down the pike in a week or so. And as soon as that is confirmed, I will make sure that everybody knows about it as quickly as possible. But so far, everything's taking longer than we would like. The courts are backed up. However, everything has gone according to the plan so far, and we feel that our case is the better of the case.
Right. Well, thanks for that, David. Questions for David from panel members? Ken, anybody from the audience?
Yes, we have a couple. One thing I wanted to clarify, and David, correct me if I'm wrong. If you want to speak to the county commissioners on this issue when it goes before them, you have to appear before the hearing examiner and be on the record.
That is correct. And we will make sure people understand that, and we will facilitate that. Right. So what will happen here is that prior to the start of the hearing before the hearing examiner, the county staff will issue their recommendation as to whether the application should be approved or not. So about 10 days before the start of the hearing, which is now tentatively scheduled for February 14th, the county staff will weigh in about what their views are with respect to this application. That in no way is binding upon the hearing examiner. She will just take that as under advisement in the same way that she hears from the public or hears from Protect Captiva or anyone else. Then the hearing examiner, after hearing the testimony from the experts and from the applicant and from the opposition and from the public, she will then issue a recommended decision, which will then go before the Board of County Commissioners. Then the county commissioners will either accept or not accept the recommendation of the hearing examiner. At that time, there's a public hearing. Those who wish to speak before the Board of County Commissioners, when they decide whether to accept the hearing examiner's recommended decision, for those people who would like to speak at that time, they will have to have had an opportunity. They would have to have spoken or registered to speak before the hearing examiner during the hearing process. So anybody who's going to speak finally before the Board of County Commissioners will also have to have testified or presented their position to the hearing examiner during this February hearing. And so we will make sure, that's correct, Ken, we will make sure everybody understands that, and we will facilitate that to make sure it happens.
Okay, the first question, and I assume this is about the summary judgment, because that's when it popped up. Is there an appeal planned if it doesn't go Protect Captiva's way?
We haven't, I guess it depends on A, what the court does and on what basis the court decides its decision. Assuming, the question assumes that we're not going to prevail on our motion for summary judgment because we would then need to appeal. So it would depend on what the decision is and whether we feel that the decision is appealable and on what basis it would be. So the answer is, if there's merit to an appeal, we would consider it extremely seriously. Hopefully, it's a question that the county will have to be considering, not us.
Okay, the second question, if the first decision goes in favor of Protect Captiva, will the other cases be affected? In other words, is one suit more important than the other?
I would say one suit is not more important than the other, and each of the courts have, this is a very complicated question. The courts have different jurisdictions. So for example, the hearing examiner that's hearing the application will not be bound by the decision on the settlement agreement necessarily, or will not be bound necessarily on the DOA decision, the decision of the administrative court. It'll be very persuasive and informative to her, and she may honor that decision, but she is not necessarily bound by it. And so that each of the decisions are sort of independent. Each of the cases is sort of independent on each other, and no one case itself would be determinative of this issue. So for example, if we prevail in the administrative hearing, that then gets enforced by that's the case where we're saying the code is inconsistent with the plan. If we prevail in that case, it then goes to the governor's office to enforce it against the county. They will tell the county, for example, I'll make this up, that you should repeal these objectionable code amendments that are not consistent with the plan. If the county refuses to do that, they could lose future funding from the state. This is a process that takes place through the state procedures. If in fact we win in the summary judgment case and they say that 912 unit cap is enforceable and is a valid contract, then what we would do, if the county decided to allow building permits greater than 912, we would then have to go into court and get a court to enjoin that particular action by the county. None of that is basically determines what the hearing examiner does, but the hearing examiner will be aware of all of this, and so will the Board of County Commissioners. So this is a complicated process, and no one case will end this, though hopefully it would, because if we get a decision that you can't issue building permit beyond 912, it's going to be clear to the county that we will enjoin any action that violates that, and therefore there's no reason to approve anything that's greater than that. So the answer to the question is they all affect each other, but not in an absolute determinative way. I hope that's helpful, but it's complicated. And the answer is, if the court rules in our favor in the settlement agreement case, I would say it doesn't make any sense for the county to ever grant density greater than the 912 at this point, because they would be then presumably enjoined from every issuing a permit greater than that. And so we're hopeful that we prevail there. If we win on the administrative case, the DOA case, the inconsistency case, we hope the county is reasonable enough to recognize that they should withdraw those objectionable code amendments that increase density and height. Otherwise, they will be facing all kinds of financial issues with the state. So the enforcement mechanisms for each of these cases are very different, and they have to be worked through, and that's why we have retained some of the best lawyers in order to handle this.
Okay, and the final question is more for Ken Suarez. Is there any information from the associations at South Seas concerning the water retention areas and drainage between the road and parking areas west of the road from Beach Villas north to Tallow Tree? The water retention / mangrove areas are full of sand. The drain pipes under the road have not worked for years.
So we're working with an environmental engineer from Dex Bender, same as Park Lewis, to work with the the state to figure out exactly what we can do to restore those wetland areas. And ongoing, as we speak, those drainage culverts underneath the road are being cleaned and jetted out. That project started last week.
Great. That's all the questions we have.
Okay. Moving down the agenda. Let's see. Next is the vote on panel appointments. The panel several months ago formed a nominating committee to replace the open seat, which to replace an open seat on the panel. The nominating committee recommended to the panel that David Mintz serve a second 3-year term, and today we are to vote on that if we want David to serve on a second 3-year term. Before we do that, Ken, have we received any other applications from the public that the panel ought to be aware of before it votes?
We have not.
Okay, so then it's simply a matter of, do we want David Mintz to serve another 3-year term as a panel representative? Am I stating that correctly?
You are.
Okay, so can I have a motion? Is that a motion, or do we just vote, or?
Just vote. I think it's voting on the nominating committee's recommendation.
Okay. All in favor of David serving another 3-year term, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
My only opposition is it's too bad we can't put them on for 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I don't know how much will be left of them after all these legal things are.
That's true. That's true.
done. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine the workload that David has had over the,
Yeah.
past year.
Yeah.
Managing this legal effort on behalf of the community.
Yeah. It's invaluable.
Right. So then the other change that we will have next year, I will be replaced on the panel. I am turned out. I am a CCA appointee, and they have appointed Michael Bennett to replace me. And I know Mike, he's a very capable person, and I think he's going to be a really good panel member. And then Ken Gill has decided he does not want to serve another 3-year term, and CPOA has appointed John Wade as one of their representatives to the panel. So those will be the changes in the panel for the coming year. So any discussion of that?
Well, I wanted to say something about you, Jay. I was going to save it for the end, but maybe we'll say it. We can deal with it now.
Okay.
You're still going to be with us because you're going to be chairing the sewer committee, and that project will probably go on for another 40 years. And
yeah, so yeah, I'm tied to the panel at the hip for the rest of my natural life, I guess.
Yeah, the rest of your life. But I just want to say that, and I think I can speak for the panel here, that your leadership has been absolutely astounding over the past number of years, not just as a panel member, but as president of the panel. And I'm not only talking about the hours and weeks and days and years you spent on the sewer stuff, which was an amazing amount of work, but you took us through the pandemic. You took us through 3 hurricanes. You took us through when we had 150 to 200 people on our Zoom calls, wanting to know how the community was faring during these hurricanes, where they were relying upon our updates. And you managed that whole process as the chair. And so I just want to say you were sort of the epitome, I think, of open, transparent, fair, kind, stable, and intelligent leadership.
Yeah, keep those words coming. You're making me feel good.
And no, this is not hyperbole. I mean, we went through some difficult times in this
Yes,
community.
we have. Right.
This panel presented the kind of integrity as a community and the kind of stability and the kind of dignity and politeness and clear-headedness that this community need at some very crisis moments. And I think you deserve our thanks and our gratitude. And I think the community really feels that, and I think you should know it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, David. It's you all are terrific to work with, and you know, my time on the panel has been very gratifying to me, and you know, I will continue to assist the panel, you know, where I can. Thanks so much. Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Next, the meeting schedule for next year, and then the budget. And then we also want to discuss whether we ought to go back to in-person meetings or some sort of hybrid meeting. So Ken, you want to lead us through those items?
Yes, the panel schedule for 2025 is included in your packet, following the same pattern of second Tuesday. So unless anybody has any changes or questions, we can just assume that's in place.
Well, the only thing I would say there is that could depend on what we decide about going to a hybrid meeting or something like that, because we would have to coordinate our meetings with who else might be using the CCA facilities at the time.
Correct. And we'd also have to waive the bylaws to change the day. So we'll worry about that when we get to that point.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's there for reference. The budget is basically just to show you what's ahead and to ask if anybody has any additional funding requests. For example, the support to ongoing projects, which last year you earmarked $20,000 for. I didn't put anything in for that because I wanted to get feedback. So look this over and let me know if you want to make changes, additions, subtractions.
Okay, well, I think I've looked this over, and from what I know we have ahead of us, I wouldn't know what else to put in here. I guess the key assumption is you have that we're going to be able to raise $36,000.
Hope springs eternal.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable compared to what we've done in the past, is it not? Or
yeah, we didn't do as much last year because of a variety of reasons. We'll push a little harder this year with our solicitations.
But we're also, as I see, we're in a pretty good cash position.
So far, so good. The city of Sanibel one day is going to want their $60,000, and that's why it's broken out the way it is. But yes, we have
But
money.
you still got 90,000 cash available for use compared to a total expenditure of
36. Yeah.
36, assuming we weren't able to raise any money.
And if you want to, and again, if you want to include some additional funding, excuse me, for Protect Captiva or whatever else might come along, we can put that in. With the iguanas moving over to CEPD, that's taken a big chunk out of the budget, which is out of the expenses, which is good. Everything else is pretty much maintenance.
Right. Okay.
So look it over. We don't have to approve it today. I can bring it back up again at the January meeting when the new members are on. But give me any feedback you've got between now and then.
Okay, does anybody have anything on the budget for Ken to consider?
I have a question on the 20,000 for support for ongoing projects and initiative, which isn't the budget, but it's this year's to date. Is that Protect Captiva?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so we're not putting in anything there, as you just said. Okay.
Well, I wanted to ask.
Point. We may want to make another donation depending upon, you know, how all the legal issues unfold over the next several months.
Okay.
So that's a good point. Thanks, Linda. Okay, we wanted to discuss whether we should continue on with our present format, which is virtual meetings. go to in-person meetings, or third alternative, have some sort of hybrid system where we would have in-person meetings, but the audience could attend by Zoom if they wanted, or if certain panel members were not able to be present, they could at least attend virtually.
So the status of that
I
after
found out about those alternatives.
the status of that after the last meeting, I reached out to the CCA. They have booked the Tuesday mornings in the main hall for the yoga classes. So that is unavailable at least through season. They do have the small conference room, which holds about 10 people, which means the panel members, if they wanted to meet in person, could be accommodated there, but having an audience would be impossible to very limited. They are planning some upgrades in their AV equipment that might help make a hybrid meeting a little smoother, but they're still almost impossible to pull off well. I don't know. I sat through the CEPD meeting yesterday, and it's just very hard when you have in-person and virtual people for that to be balanced out well, unless you really throw a lot of technology at the problem. The human tendency is, if you're in a room full of people, you talk to the room full of people. And to try to integrate someone on the screen into that conversation, unless they're very well mic'd, is very difficult. And plus you have to really mic the room. The CEPD meetings, I think they had 2 mics there, and it was still hard to hear some of the board members when they were speaking. And then there was lag time in the audio, so there'd be a lot of crosstalk. So, I mean, a hybrid meeting is possible, but it's not going to be pretty. And you're not going to have the level of interactivity that you're used to either with an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting. And if you want to have an in-person meeting, it won't be at the CCA unless you change your meeting day.
Well, that wouldn't be a great problem to change the meeting day, would it? Or
Well, like I said, we had to waive the bylaws at least for that period of time, because we stayed in the bylaws explicitly the second Tuesday. So for the sake of propriety, you'd want to have a waiver in place. Otherwise, no, it's not a problem. We still need to sit down with the CCA and say, what else do you have scheduled? Catherine didn't seem to think there was going to be a problem, but she wanted specific dates before she would commit, which is fair. She's got to manage the facility.
right.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a little bit. I don't think we should do anything that interferes with a quality Zoom meeting. I mean, if there's a way to do a hybrid meeting where the quality of people who couldn't be there could be maintained, then I would feel more comfortable with it. But we've had, I don't want to be in a situation where the panel just speaks to itself. We're speaking to the community on a regular basis. We had, today, we had like 15 or 16 people in the audience besides the panel members. If there's an issue that's important to people, we get 100 people coming to the Zoom meetings. And I don't think we should, I think we want to continue to do that. A lot of people are not back in their homes. A lot of people are not on the island. And I think it's vital that we keep up the communication link with people who can't be here or who can't attend in-person meetings. So, and my experience with the CEPD meetings are very difficult to hear and to follow. It almost discouraged participation because you just give up on it because it becomes so difficult to understand what's happening. So I agree with Ken, unless we have the technology to really improve that kind of meeting, I really would prefer to keep Zoom meetings so that people can be part of, our community can be part of what we're doing. I know some people really want to be face to face with each other, and I think that's important and that's good. But I don't want to do that at the expense of having people who are not here to be fully engaged in what we're doing.
Ken, can I ask a question to Ken?
Yeah, of course.
If we do an in-person meeting, this is just a thought. If we did like January through April in person on a Wednesday or whatever, those meetings are recorded, correct?
Yes, we would still record them,
And then so
audio at least, if not audio and video.
So people who were interested could at least listen to what happened at that meeting, possibly. And if they had questions, they could, I don't know if that's a bad idea, but I agree, unless, I'm not a big favor of a combined issue. You either go one way or the other. And would that be good for the people? And granted, there's a lot of people that aren't in their houses yet, but if we did it just maybe in the wintertime, it's just a thought. I'm just throwing it out there for conversation.
Well, the question you also have to decide is, if all the panel members can attend in person, then you could have an effective meeting and we could broadcast it. And in theory, at least take questions from people, but they would not be able to interact. If you want to have panel members virtually as well as in person, that's where the real problem comes, because there's just no effective way of having this when you've got some people in person, some people on the screen.
I remember back when we were, when we were doing in-person meetings, and during the off season, we would typically have maybe half the panel members present, and the other half trying to listen in on a telephone call.
I wasn't talking about off season. I'm talking just maybe for a period, just as a thought.
Right.
The
I think the point I'm trying to make is one of the disadvantages of going to an in-person meeting is that you will not have panel members attending a lot of the meetings during the off season. They'll be trying to call in, on a telephone line or.
Jay, I'm not talking about off season. I agree with you. Off season Zoom is definitely the way to go.
Okay, right.
Start out, is there a possibility for a 3 or 4 month run to do it there? And then if Ken says we can get questions if we broadcast it, versus, I don't know, just a thought.
Sure, I understand, right. It's a worthwhile thought, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that idea myself. I mean, I hear the points around making sure we don't go a step backwards, but I think there's a lot to be gained from meeting in person as well.
Well, as a question, for the next 4 meetings, how many of the panel members would be on the island for all 4 of them?
I would.
Okay.
What was that count, Ken?
Probably everybody. It looked like everybody but Bruce, as far as I could tell, and I'm assuming John would be mostly available.
Right.
Have a conflict on.
Yeah, now that I'm working for this year, I can't attend in person, but normally I would.
And I have a conflict on Wednesday mornings.
And then we'd also have to determine if we change the date, would that impact our reports from other organizations? From Sergeant Zeltman and Chief Powell and all that.
I could certainly look and see if the Wakefield room is open. I mean, Tuesday's midweek for us, even in season, it's not a crisis if we do it in the morning. It's just a thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Wakefield room would be adequate for in-person meetings. We
did it for 3 or 4
have
months.
a pretty sizable attendance in that room also, as well as all the panel members.
Exactly. Well, it gives somebody something to chew on. I'll make sure I'm
not much.
Okay. Because what are we in December now, right? So we'd have to make up our minds pretty soon.
Well, we need to know probably at the January meeting, because we need to advertise when the meeting is going to be held, and we need to be pretty transparent about that in order to meet both our intent and our bylaws.
Well,
and then we also should look at the other. I mean, I've obviously have a vested interest in this. You go into in-person meetings, that adds 3 hours minimum to my day.
Right, because you have to drive in from Fort Myers to attend the meetings and so forth,
and work with the setup and all that. So that's I'll have to decide how I feel about that, but that's not a consideration, just an observation.
Could we just get comment when someone has Jay?
Yes. Go ahead, John.
In my experience that, and I'm sure everyone may be aware of this, but the technology actually exists to pull off a hybrid meeting that I think would be satisfactory to both the panel and the public. But we don't have the technology and we don't have the facility. I think the bigger problem is utilizing temporary space, because the technology to pull off a really good hybrid meeting requires a permanent space that you can hardwire the necessary equipment. Speaking for the CEPD, and I'm sure Linda would agree, we're not happy with the quality of our meetings. And we heard some of that today, and we're right on board with that. We've had numerous discussions about how we can make the technology for our meetings a lot more, user-friendly. I would say if it's a possibility, this is not something I think you're going to accomplish by January, but if the community can figure out a good permanent space for which, there can be some investment into a updated new technology hybrid system where both parties could utilize it, as well as maybe other entities within Captiva, and make it a community audio-visual center. That might be something that we can all put our heads together in. And I know that the CEPD would be very interested in helping invest in that, and maybe the necessary costs could be distributed among the different entities. But I think obviously you need to find a permanent space, whether that be possibly in the library, maybe the existing space. I don't know. It would depend on the community and maybe everybody putting their heads together and figuring out if there is a space available that we could all invest in. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for that, John. Anybody else want to speak on this matter? Okay, well, should we just have a vote, I guess? Do we want to pursue going back to in-person meetings, or do we want to stay as is?
I think John's point is well taken. I think we would all like to have a valid, operable hybrid meeting, but we don't have the ability to do so now. And if we tried, it would be very difficult for the public to participate or even hear what goes on in our meetings.
Right.
So I think what we need to, and I think that, I know the CCA, Ken said that the CCA is looking to upgrade. I don't know quite what that means or whether that meets the criteria that John was talking about or not. So I think we need some more information. And I would suggest we stick in January with a Zoom meeting and then get a report from Ken on exactly what CCA is doing to upgrade it, and B, think about whether John's suggestion makes sense, and whether that's at the CCA or some other facility where we can have a community ability to have hybrid meetings. So, but I don't think it's possible by January.
David, can I make a comment too?
Yeah, of course, Tony.
I agree with exactly what David's saying. And I think obviously January, we'd have to do a Zoom meeting. The question is, I guess what I'm asking is, do we want to do February, March, and April as an in-person without trying to do it as a, double, with a split meeting? Does that make sense? We could keep it on the Tuesday schedule, but if we keep going Zoom, of course, we can keep it on a Tuesday schedule. But I would not recommend a hybrid meeting, because it would take, like John said, you have to have the right technology, and it's not going to happen that fast. So the question I'm saying is, do we want to do March, February, March, and April in just the Wakefield room on a Tuesday with that? I know it's going to
have it videoed, and then people who
videoed or something, people could call in for questions, but they wouldn't be able to have
the public would still be invited to the meeting, though. Is that
absolutely correct? Yeah. Now that's just a question that maybe people need to think about, or we could certainly, because it has to be notified, right, Ken?
Yeah, I think we have to. What is it? A week in advance of where the meeting is going to be held, Ken?
Yes, and we also are supposed to publish an annual schedule of meetings.
Yes, okay.
Which typically is done in January.
Just somebody let me know if you want to do it that way, fine. If we want to just keep going with Zoom, I'm okay. Either way, I'm just bringing it up as an option, that's all.
Okay, well, I think where I am is, I think we probably ought to stay with Zoom. You know,
That's fine.
I'm, you know, generally in favor of in-person meetings. I don't know how businesses run by Zoom alone. I mean, most of the important decisions I made in business were, you know, over a cup of coffee or in the men's room or whatever, you know. Uh, so I don't know. I think I would prefer to stay Zoom, but Tony, maybe you could check on the availability of the Wakefield room and
I would certainly look for February, February, March, and April on a Tuesday, and I'll email you yay or nay on that, Jay.
Okay.
And then, I don't care which way it goes. It's just, I just want to put that on the table. That's all.
And I could certainly follow up with the CCA and find out what their plans are, because I think John's idea is sound. And in my mind, at least, the CCA's probably got the best facility if they're willing to look at some hardwiring, because it's big enough to accommodate a crowd, but has enough permanent to it between the lighting and the staging, because that's the other problem. You have to have the technology, but you also have to have the room set up correctly, lit correctly, and with a soundboard, so that you can put together essentially a show. It's not just the cameras; it's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and that's where the complication comes in. You know, if you can't run stuff through a soundboard, you may be cross talking so much it becomes incoherent. So I can certainly follow up with Catherine and the CCA board and find out what they're looking at, so to let you know in January kind of what's on the horizon.
Okay.
Does anybody know what technology would be required to make these hybrid meetings really functionable? That maybe they can also talk to CCA, just because I'm not sure if CCA at this point knows what it is they would really need to make this work.
Well, they're looking at the meeting owls, which is one of the technological approaches that's a step in the right direction. It's basically, in theory, a 360 camera that follows the speaker. The question there is, how well is the mic pickup? And as we've seen in other meetings, you can have this thing in the middle of the table. It actually essentially acts as a conference phone, which from an audio perspective is crap. You get you get the dishes clanking in the background, as opposed to having a couple that are more focused on it, like a 3-3-3 setup for your panel members, where they would be able to pick up the panel voices a little more clearly without picking up the ambient sounds, and then have some place where audience members could come to a podium so they could be heard and seen. Then figuring out how to integrate the virtual panel members in an effective way, which comes down to some technology and a lot of the meeting chair, who's have to basically look at the screen as well as the people in front of them to see who's talking. But the technology, I've looked a little bit into this, John. I know you have some background in this and you've probably done some studies. So if you have any ideas, share them with the CCA and myself, and we can try to work on something.
I'd be happy to offer up any help with regard to the technology for sure. There are a number of options. Cost, I don't know. Some of it can get fairly costly pretty quickly. The microphone situation is definitely the bigger part. The video technology today does allow for multiple cameras to act autonomously.
Right.
With this new AI stuff, it really picks up the speakers pretty quickly. I would say an investment into a really good conference table that has individual seats that have microphones would be the way to go. But again, it's a permanent situation. So I think that's the first step would be to figure out what the facility looks like and what its limitations are. But I'll be happy to offline talk to anyone and offer up my my experience in what the options may be.
Okay, well, let me see if I can bring this to a close. I would say my preference would be to continue to plan on having Zoom meetings. but review it again in January to see if we think we have some chance of making hybrid meetings work. So I guess that's my preference. David, I think that'd be your preference too. Do other people, I think this should be on a majority basis rather than just one or two people saying this is how it's going to be. Do people, any of you really disagree with the, going about it in that way?
No, I think it's a good idea
Okay.
to continue on Zoom until we find out a good system that will work for a hybrid meeting.
Okay.
Because it cannot be organized it cannot be organized that all panel members are on Captiva at the time of meeting, even in season, it seems.
Right.
Jay, I also think, I mean, the panel is here for the community, and we've had such great response being on Zoom that to
It's certainly easier for people to attend the
I mean,
audience.
we had,
Much
you know,
better.
half a dozen people in the audience typically. And that's fine, but as David said, I think that, you know, getting a response from the community and having 45 people on the call on a normal day is, I think, indicative of, you know, people need to participate, and they can't do it if we're doing it in person, at least.
Right. Right. Okay, well, without objection, I guess let's move on down the agenda. Thank you all for that discussion. Where are we next? We are on wastewater committee update. There's nothing further on wastewater. I'm still waiting on Sanibel to finish their economic report. I was told that they were unhappy with the progress they were making on it, and they were thinking about changing a consultant. So Sanibel is taking a very long time on this, but on the other hand, I understand they have you know, a lot of issues they're dealing with right now. And as I've said before, I think we're going to have to get some clarification on the South Seas issues and you know, what the density implications of this are going to be, because a lot of people are worried if we have central sewer that will lead to increased density. And if we're unsuccessful in our efforts to keep South Seas where we are, then I think that's going to reduce a lot of the demand or desire for people on Captiva to have septic systems. So, but I will keep at it and see if I can get this project moving along better. Stormwater committee update. David, you were tracking this one. At last I heard, we had, I think, 3 engineering firms submit bids for this project, and the county was, I guess, trying to make a decision which firm to use. Have you heard anything beyond that?
Yes, I have. There's an evaluation committee, and they met on November 13th, Wednesday, November 13th, to what they call shortlist the proposals that they received for this project. And they decided that there would be not 3, but now 4 finalists for the stormwater project. And the 4 finalists are Collective Water Resources, LLC, Johnson Murmuran Thompson, Inc., Respect Company, LLC, and Weston and Sampson Engineers, Inc. And they have scheduled a meeting for Monday, December 16th to begin with their final ranking. And they are going to interview 20 minutes with each of the 4 contestants, so to speak. They're going to interview those 4 companies and then make a decision, I presume, based on their interview process that's going to take place on the 16th. The interviewing process, according to the notice I just received, is private. In other words, it's not open to the public. But after the interview process takes place, their decision on their final ranking will be open to the public. So the Q&A sessions with the 4 companies are closed, but the evaluation committee discussion and final ranking will be open to the public. I'm not sure it's something that the public needs to attend. We will find out who is selected, presumably, and we should know that shortly after December 16th.
Okay.
David, do we know anybody on the evaluation committee?
I'm sure that the evaluation committee is, the members are listed. I have not reviewed.
Nobody offhand. Okay, thank you.
I think it's part of some of them are county people and some of them probably are appointed to that committee.
Okay.
I've been in contact with one of the 4 organizations on a fairly regular basis. A number of conversations. They were very interested in working with the panel if they get the bid to understand exactly what our concerns are, where the areas of flooding have existed over time, and they expect the panel to help them in their engineering and planning process. I have not heard from the other 3.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David. Development Committee, and nice job on the cruise. I thought it went very well. Do you have any other comments on development?
Nope. I think for next year, probably for the cruise to decide if we want to go back to a fee-based, we used to have it would be $100. This year it was free. And so perhaps one of the issues was that we had 85 people sign up, but only half of them showed up. So that may be because they didn't pay. The other hand, we saw some new people who said to me, they saw it on Eventbrite and thought it sounded like fun, and they'd never been out to the island before. So in some ways it was introducing Captiva to people in the area, which I think was nice. People were happy to be there and really enjoyed themselves. So there's, different ways to go about it. We also can send out the annual appeal in early December, about a week ago. And thus far, we've had $1,500 come in, 3 separate $500 donations. So hopefully that will continue so we can meet our budget. But other than that.
Okay, you say the annual appeal that went out in the mail, or?
No, last year we did just an online, and this year we've done an online. It costs over $1,500 to mail it out, and so I think we'll just see if we're getting a decent return.
Right.
Unless there's a strong opinion from the panel on doing a mailing.
Well, I think let's just compare what we get this year with what we've historically achieved by doing it on a mail basis, and let that guide our decision going forward.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion that panel members would like to bring up? Ken, anything left from the audience?
There is not.
Okay, I think we are finished then. So a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion. Happy holidays.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Okay.
Happy holidays to you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.